Hey guys, and welcome to a new tutorial. Today I am in beautiful Venice Beach, California, and I'm going to be showing you a 360 video lapse. Now, you've probably seen this on Instagram or some YouTube video, but it's the concept of having the camera and moving it around your subject, and then as it hits the wall, you transition to a new location. Now, hopefully today I'll show you some tips and tricks that you can use to apply this to your videos and pictures, and I got something up my sleeve, so stay tuned. Let's get started. For the first part of this tutorial, you want to find a location. So the first location that we have scouted out is this graffiti wall right here. So this effect works best when you have a subject that you are focusing on the entire time. Now imagine this. In order to do this effect, you want to create an arc around your subject. Now this is just a half arc, but you want to try to walk around that arc as smooth as possible. So, for example, to do this effect, you're going to make sure your subject is in the center of your frame and you tell them to freeze. So Josh, don't move. He's going to freeze, and then I'm going to keep him in the center. You can use a gimbal for this process, and that will make your footage that much smoother, like Josh is going to do in his tutorial, so please check that out once he gets that uploaded. But all you have to do is a half arc around your subject, keeping them in the center, and go all the way as close to the wall as you can, and then you are done. So, Josh, you can stop freezing now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, okay. So that is the effect in a nutshell, and it's so simple to do, but that was a video lapse. You could do this a couple different ways. The first way I showed you was a video. So I just walked around my subject, I tried to hold it as stable as I could, or you could use a gimbal to make it even more stable. Now, the other thing that you can do is photos. So you can take a bunch of photos and make a photo lapse, which is pretty cool because I like using that when I want to have the ability of using raw photos, because sometimes I want to change the colors of my background and skin tones a little bit more than what you can do with videos. So I'm gonna do the same thing with Josh, except I'm gonna take about 30 photos. The more photos you take, the smoother it will come out. So now that we did both a video lapse and a photo lapse, the next step is fairly simple, and all we have to do is go find a couple different locations, and then I'll show you how we blend these together in post. So let's go explore. When comparing the video lapse and the photo lapse, I tend to like the photo lapses more. The reason being is you can get a little more creative with your photo lapses, as in movement and stop motion stuff. So with stop motion films, you get a really cool jittery effect, and you can kind of do whatever the hell you want. With video, it captures every single movement, so sometimes you can't get that stop motion effect. But play around with both and see what works for you. I always push myself creatively, and the reason why I like using pictures instead of videos are because you can do some insane stuff. Like, for example, I just jumped and Josh took a picture of me every time I was in the air, and now I can do the 360 effect while I'm jumping in the air. So it looks pretty sweet. I'm mainly curious to see what you can create, so we're gonna go to one more location and then do the exact same process, and then I'll see you guys on the computer. And all these clips are me walking around my subject, which is Josh. As you can see, all this is shot on handheld, so some of it is a little shaky. That is why I applied Warp Stabiliser to stabilize the footage, and then I re-exported all those videos into these stable clips. Again, if you want more stable footage, check out Josh's tutorial linked in the description down below. In order to do a video lapse, all you have to do is drag all of your video clips that you want to transition to into your timeline back to back. They are in normal speed and they are not that fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight everything, right click, and let's change the speed and duration to about 1000. You'll notice that it created all these gaps. So in order to delete these gaps, all you have to do is hit in between the gap and select the delete key. That will bring everything close to each other. You also notice I have an audio track right here. I don't really need the audio, so I'm going to right click on all of them and select unlink. I'm also going to hit O at the very end of my project and I at the beginning of my project, and then go to sequence, render into out, so I can see what it's going to look like. After playing it back, you'll notice that some of these transitions aren't as smooth. Like the ones that work the best are the ones that have a wall or a subject in front of them so it can just transition seamlessly into the clips. The ones that don't work are this one, as in it kind of has a air as the wall, so it's just kind of like not close enough. But so we can play around with the positioning of all of these to get a better transition. And then one thing to keep in mind is the best way to make this transition that much more effective is to actually try to position your subject so they are matching. So one fun tip you can do is you can go to the effects controls and start to keyframe your position. So I'm going to keyframe the position and keyframe the scale and drag both those keyframes to the beginning. And then I'm going to go to the end and kind of jump back between these clips and see what I need to do. I need to adjust this to the right and maybe zoom in a tiny bit. So what I'm going to do is adjust it to the right, up a little bit, and then let's just punch this in a little bit to rearrange that, and then quickly scrub through these and see what's going on. Yeah, so that's starting to look a little bit better. And then let's make sure we drag our keyframes to the end. So playing back through this again, you can see that it makes that transition a little bit more seamless. So one thing you'll notice, you can play around with your speed. So that's 1000%. Let's right click on all of them and change it to, let's say 1700. And then again, delete your gaps. And then I'm going to render that entire sequence. While it's rendering, I want to say that this effect is fairly hard to do very successfully if you don't spend a lot of time. As you saw in the beginning, I was just kind of run and gun, doing it as fast as I can. I did a lot of rewinds and fades and punch-in, zooms, little effects here and there to spice it up a little bit. Because if you're just doing a 360 continuous loop, it will work with video, but it's just not the best. So that's why I was playing around with the beginning edit. But that's kind of how you do the video portion. Now moving on to the photo portion, you'll see that I have a couple bins in here, and these bins just house all of the pictures that we took from the shoot. It's fairly simple. All you have to do is select a photo series that you shot and then drag it into your timeline. Now, Premiere has an interesting way of organizing their footage by name. So you'll see that my first image is actually at the bottom. So I'm going to drag that down into my timeline, and then I'm going to shift and select all of the rest and then drag those down. Just make sure that it is in order when you drag it into your timeline. So let's zoom out a little bit and then highlight everything. And the first thing we're going to do is right click, select set to frame size. That'll set our picture up ready for our next step. All we have to do now is right click on all of our images and select nest. Create that into a nested sequence, and let's just hit R on our keyboard to bring up the rate stretch tool and drag this till we get a speed that we like. The first thing you need to do is set your scale so that you can punch in a little bit, since we shot this in a different aspect ratio. Now that our scale is set, we can begin to adjust our image accordingly. What you can do now is go into your nested sequence by double clicking, and this is where you can spend a lot of time or no time at all. If you took your pictures in the dead center, then you don't have to adjust your images. But the one tip I will give you, if you have to adjust an image, all you have to do is take your second image that you're transitioning to and put it over your first image and change the opacity down a little bit. And then all you have to do is like resize and position this to get it to match perfectly. It's not a necessary step, but I promise you, if you do that step on the more complex transitions, it will look beautiful. So from that, let's just do one more bin, and let's drag the jumping one down into the timeline. So looking back at this right away, you can see that we are going into a jumping image, and it doesn't really blend. And that's because in the beginning, I told you a little bit about how scale and everything needs to be exact. So we're actually going to use one more example for this final shot. So as you can see, we had a couple misfires in the shoot. So I'm just going to hit Q to delete everything in the beginning half. So we're transitioning in between these clips, and I'm noticing the speed of the one where I'm in the air is a little bit faster than the speed when I'm on the ground. So I'm going to hit R to bring up the rate stretch tool and increase the speed a little bit. Cool, so that's starting to look really, really good. So one thing that we'll have to do is adjust the scale to get the scale that we want, and then adjust the scale on the second clip as well. that is how to do the photo version of this. Again, keep playing around with different effects like I did in the beginning. Like you can make a cut and then hold Alt to copy your layer, and then right click on your second layer and go to speed and adjustments and change it to reverse speed. So you can play around with playing it back and adding different effects here and there, like a crossfade. Just right click, apply a default transition. That'll give you this like ghosting effect. So keep playing around with everything, and honestly, you can make some pretty dope stuff. It just takes some time. Well, if you guys learned something today, please let me know down in the comments below. Hit that like button, and if you're new here, consider subscribing, because I'm going to be making some more stuff in the future. And as always, I'll see you next time.